very much. Thank you very much. And now to Dr. Peter Linneman.
Two lessons. One, when opportunity knocks, understand it's knocking. Because a lot of people, we were talking about academics, and what would most of academics said? No, no. And of course that changed my life. If I hadn't gotten that kind of income, you wouldn't be sitting here. Because a university professor's salary might support 6 of you or 8 of you or some number, but it's not going to support 342. So it changed my life for the good. And by the way, what would have happened if I didn't like it? I would have stopped. That's the worst that could have happened. I would have stopped. And instead it came on and it continues to evolve. So one lesson is when opportunity knocks, be aware that it's knocking. And the second is, if you do good work, somebody will notice. They may not notice in a day, they may not notice in a week, they may not notice in a month, they may not notice even in a year. But somebody will notice. If you scrub the toilets better than anybody else, somebody is going to notice and say, well, let's give them a chance to do this. Because you run businesses, it's hard to find people who do things well. It's just hard. It's not hard to find smart people. There are a lot of smart people. It's hard to find people with a reasonable degree of intelligence, with relatively the right training, who do good work. And so the only reason I got that opportunity is I had, quote, done good work, and somebody noticed. If after a year or two, no one has noticed, you've got to go look in a mirror and ask yourself, am I doing good work? Now, if it's a horrible economy, if the politics of the moment are awful, okay, right? But I'm just saying in the normal course of life, if no one has noticed, you may not be doing as good a work as you think. And you have to then say, how do I pick up my game? Those are lessons.
Miss Leland, admission 001 from Sam Elim. I joined Sam Elim 2003 when I was joining Form 1. And I'm very much grateful to God and to my dad, Peter. He did a lot to my life. If it was not him, I could not have joined Form 1, and I could not have gone anywhere. But for now, as you all said that I'm from the office of the president. I'm working as an administrator at my location. I love that job because I have an opportunity to help somebody. I have an opportunity to help someone who is in need of help. I remember 1998, when I was in class 5, and my father was ready to give me out to be married by an old man. I went to my chief that by then, I went to him and told him that my father is ready to give me out to be married. It was 12 years. I'm so happy that any young girl, any young woman, anybody who wants justice can come to my office and I can help. That is the best thing, that's the achievement. That was my willing.
My name is Lisette Calderon. I was a student of Peter's back in the day at the University of Pennsylvania. I since went on to graduate. It is an honor to be here today with all of you. My family had to flee Cuba with the shirts on their back. I am the first person in my family to go to college. I went on to study at the University of Pennsylvania. Today, I still carry the first check that I ever earned. I am the oldest sibling. I'm also the first person to speak English in my family, and went on to become, since then, under Peter's guidance, my father passed away when I was young, so I too was blessed to have him as a mentor, and he believed in me. And I went on to become, today we're the largest female-founded development company in the state of Florida. We are real estate development. We're vertically integrated. We run a construction division. We have a management division, a development division, an investments division. And especially for the women out there, there's not many women and not many people that look like me in my line of work. But all it took was someone to believe in me and mentors to do what I do. So I encourage you to keep doing it. And that's been my journey. And now I'm at the point where I get to bring my daughter here and hope she continues that legacy.
So nice to be amongst you and hear so many inspiring stories. Like Mahesh said, we were in Nairobi also, and I met many of the SMLMO alumni there also. It's great and it's inspiring to hear the background some of you have come from. Most of you have come from the background that you have come from, and for you to reach here, with, of course, with the support of the foundation, with the organization. I'm very inspired that the kind of work Peter has done and has started, and it has brought all of. I really find inspiring about Peter is the time and the love that he has given to all of you. So that is something that's the learning I'm taking away from it. As Mahesh and I have been thinking about what we can do to give back. Now, I mean, so far I think a lot of the time we have spent in building our career, building our company, and this is the time we have been thinking about how to give back to the society. So this is one thing I'm taking away from it is charity is not about money, it's about the time and love you can give also.
Not everyone gets opportunity like this, so you're very privileged, so make the best out of it. Do your best and do well in studies, work hard. There are a lot of opportunities available in today's world through internet, science, technology, and so on. So take the best advantage of that. And the second thing is, one of the guy who spoke, sang song, he said very good thing. I didn't catch his name. He said very good thing, no? You will do well in your life. Most of you, if not all. Most of you will do well in life. And the way you got helped through this organization, you imbibe the same culture and help, if not 300 kids, 400 kids, at least help 1 or 2 kids. Go back to your village and find somebody underprivileged, somebody who has aspiration, has talent, and cannot do things. So do something. So that way the flame spreads. So with that, I'll thank Peter for giving this opportunity to see this in action, and wish you all best of luck.
Christine Kwak. I started in Peter's program in 1992, just when I was maybe this tall, right, Peter, when I was little. We've been business partners in real estate since 2010. And the journey that I have had meeting Peter is that it's always an education. And so I hope that he never retires and that I am continuing to learn until the very end. So one thing I want to share is that when I came to business school at Wharton, I had transitioned from architecture. And he would get a couple architects every year, and he would call us the recycled architects. Because in architecture, as wonderful and rewarding as it is, it's not as financially rewarding. And so one of the things that Faith always talks about is you got to find your passion, but you also have to make money. And that's what I did. I transitioned from architecture, which didn't pay very well, but it's going to be very rewarding for me in the late part of my life, hopefully. But so Peter and I have been investing. We've invested with Lisette. We've invested with Anoop. And so it's a wonderful industry to be a part of.
Everyone, I'm Mniralini. I was here, 14 years ago. I remember about a year and a half ago, I was trying to figure out if I should leave the job that I was at, which I loved. I was working at a bank. I was doing strategy for them. I loved my job. I had a really tough boss, and I didn't know what to do. Should I stay in the job? Should I take a different job? And Anoop's like, you should talk to Peter. And he just gave me really good advice. I don't think there's any reason being a mom should stop you from working. In fact, if you're a mom, you are teaching your children how important it is to be at home and be there for your family, but also how important it is to work, to have your own life and your own passion and your own source of income. It's important to be independent. If you're the mom of a daughter, you should definitely work because that'll encourage your daughter to work one day. If you're the mom of a son, you should still work because he will understand how to have respect for his wife, down the road and how to give her the space to work as well. So don't ever let it stop you. I think women can do so much more than men can. We are always multitasking. Our brains are so powerful. We can make a baby. We can make a human being. Of course, you can be a mom and work. There's nothing you can't do.
Well, my name is Anoop Dave. You have my wife and daughter here. This is my third time coming here, but you're not alone. And how wonderful is that? And people who you don't even know care about you and are thinking about you, and so are their friends. With some of us here, with Lisette, with Mahesh, with myself, you're looking into a time machine, into the future. And my father came from very humble circumstances. He was in a village in India, and he wore shorts. I think some of you wanted to be doctors, right? Yep. So my father wore shorts until he was in medical school. They didn't have the money for the extra fabric. And then he became a doctor, and he got to the US and became very successful in medicine and other businesses. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. So for your kids, this is what the future looks like. And when you hear from Pooja and Mahesh, that may be some of you will become like that, or your friends will. And when, I've known Mahesh since I was a teenager, right? And all of our friends, and Rishi I've known since I was a teenager. They were both, not as smart, so they only went to MIT, but they did okay. So you'll see that your friends that you keep quality friends, no quality people. And it's fun for me to see how in the chats, I can see the bonds that are forming between you. Some of you will help each other out. Some of you will be astounding successes, and you'll lift up a lot of other people. And I get very happy to see that. And I get happy to think that, in a way, I'm helping my dad and my grandfather by helping some of you today.
I'm Mia. It is my first time here in Africa, here in Kenya, and I feel so lucky to be here. I went first on Friday to the first Samelimu experience I've ever had, and just sitting there for a few hours changed my perspective, changed how I see work, how I see school. And I just want to say, all of you, and today even more so, you all really inspired me. I'm going into my second year of university, so I'm about the same age as many of you. I'm also going to be studying business, doing real estate, finance, and listening to your stories is inspiring, hearing your career path, the hard work that you put in, and how far you've come. So I know that if you can do it, I can do it, we all can do it. And I'm just trying to push myself to be the best version so that one day I can be like my mom and like Peter and giving back, and like all of you helping change the next generation.
I am Christine C. I am an entrepreneur, and my journey to become an entrepreneur came from watching my mother, by virtue of necessity, become an entrepreneur. She is Vietnamese, and during the Vietnam War, her father and her two older brothers were killed. So she became the sole person to have to earn money for the rest of her siblings, there were 5, and her mother. And not everything worked. She tried every single type of company that she could develop. She tried talking to people, making partnerships, starting businesses, importing decorative items, fabrics, whatever. Sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. But what I watched in her was that the word fail didn't mean over. It meant figure out what went wrong and do something different. And that's what worked for her. So that's what I do. So female experience with this, because as an entrepreneur, there aren't many of us at the table. But with my husband and I, we're both entrepreneurs, and we take turns supporting each other.
And the version of yesterday is totally different from the version that we have today. It really excites me to see who you're becoming, and I can't wait every day. It gives us so much joy.
Ashe oleng, samelimu, ashe oleng, nashukuru.
For a year or two, don't do it. It's unintentionally cruel. because I support her for 12 and 13, 14, and then this poor kid is stuck. So he said, make the commitment the same as you make with your child and you make with your children, those of you who have children, which is, I'm going to support them all the way through. I mean, and so that was the commitment. It's not a legal commitment. We've honored it. All 4 of those graduated successfully, and a lot more. Now, the next phase was, I'm dumb. So we supported 4, and I would communicate with Faith, and she would say, I have this girl. And she had no one to support her. She lost the sponsor, or in the village, she passed, her mother can't support her to go to school. Could you take 1 more? Well, of course I can take 1 more, right? I mean, if you can do 4, you can do 5, right? There's no magic about 4. And then, like 3 months later, I still hadn't figured it out, that she's a lot smarter than me. And I'd get a message basically saying, I've got this young man, and he's 12, and could you take him? And she'd tell me his story, and I say, well, okay, sure. And she said, well, and also, there's another young man and a young girl, and they're also in tough, you think you could take them? So we went from 4 to about 40 in 4 years, or some number like that. Then I realized I've got 40. It's like, what the hell? How did she do that? And the reason I call her a magician is like pulling a rabbit out of the hat, or, cards that magically appear and so forth out of nothing. Then we got to 40, and I had a stupid idea, and she reinforced it. And my stupid idea is, well, if we had 100, I don't know if you remember me saying this, but if we had 100, at least one of them is going to be 1 out of 100. You know what I mean by like 1 out of 100? And 5 of them are going to be 5 out of 100. 20 of them are going to be 20 out of 100. We could have an impact much bigger. I'm thinking statistically now, right? We could have a much bigger impact, because if I only have 4, maybe they're not the 1 in 100. And she said, that's a great idea. That's a brilliant idea. And so suddenly, in like 6 months, we're at 100. I go, what the hell did I get myself into? And then I realized that what I'd gotten myself into is one of the greatest experiences of my life. And you think that you get more from us, me, than I get from you, but that's not true. I've learned and I've grown, and to see the graduates, I remember you when we were, right? And I remember when I'd say, who are you? No, I can't hear you. Who are you? And then now you stand up. I remember when you couldn't speak. Yeah.
Allow me to give the statistics today.
So today's statistics.
Today we have 9 primary children, 64 in high school, 101 going in tertiary. Alumni, we have 194. Lewa is still supporting 20 of our students. So in total, through Dr. Linneman and through San Elimu, we have 380 children.
Starting with 1. And there's a lesson there. But you start with 1. Right? Start with 1 client. Right? Start with 1 employee. And you'll figure out how to make it work up to some point. Interesting, there was a time when I thought about going to a big foundation and asking them to support what we're doing. And a very good friend of mine, Darla Moore, some of you may remember that were around. She was here maybe 10, 12 years ago, a very good friend, said, don't do it. We got talking about it a lot, and she said, don't do it. I said, why? We could do more. She said, the problem is, if you go to a big foundation, what's going to happen is they're not going to give you $50,000 to support a couple. They're going to give you $100,000. They're going to do it in chunks of like $2 million. Okay, now $2 million is a lot of children and a lot of staff. And you say, well, that's good, right? That's good. The bad is that foundation is going to have a new director in 2 or 3 years. And they're going to have a new program officer in 2 or 3 years. And the program officer you got the grant from was excited about education in the way we were doing it in Africa. But the new director wants to do healthcare in Namibia, let's say. And suddenly the $2 million disappears. And what happens to all those kids? Okay? So that's also a lesson, which in general is a lesson, which is getting big is good to a point, but it also can be a trap. So Christine and I have kept the firm relatively small because I don't want to be trapped by my business. And that's one of the things I'm sure you guys wrestle with, and I know Anoop and Lisette wrestle with, is how big do I want to be, because there are gains from it and challenges from it. And you're going to face that as you go. But that's a little history. I thank the staff. I thank the alum for coming. Those of you who are students have to understand they don't have to come. There's no check waiting for them. You have to come, otherwise we may not pay your tuition. Oh shit, well then I'll come. Right? The alum don't have to come. This is a family. Some of them came from a long way away. They don't have to come. I'm so grateful that they do. That's the real message for those of you who are currently students. They came. Just think about that. They came. There's an amazing movie made by Steven Spielberg probably 28 years ago called Saving Private Ryan. Has anybody ever seen it? It's an amazing movie. It's not an easy movie, but it's an amazing movie. I know a lot of you watch. I don't know if it's on Netflix, but Saving Private Ryan is a movie you should watch at some point. And in it is a line, I'm not going to give away the movie, in it is a line, earn it. Earn it. Those of you who are blessed, earn it the rest of your life. And by that I mean, you got it and somebody else didn't that we could have supported. We could have supported, instead of him, some other child I didn't know, some other child Faith didn't know. He earned it. She earned it. She earned it. And by the way, don't stop earning it. All your life, earn it. Because you got what somebody else could have gotten. Make it worthwhile. Make it worthwhile. He made, she made, I made with scholarships that I got. Those people didn't know me who gave me a scholarship, but I've earned it. Or I try to keep earning it. So think of Saving Private Ryan, if you will, in that regard. What else? Most of you met me for the first time. A couple of you have met me once or twice. You think all Americans were born rich. Not true. I started work when I was 12 years old. And since I was 12 years old, I've worked at least 20 hours a week and as much as 100 hours a week. Okay? Not good or bad, just a fact. I paid for my own high school, private school. I bought my own clothes when I was a kid. It's not like my parents were mean, they just didn't have a lot of money. And they had 5 kids. And it's not good or bad, but don't assume that when you see somebody that they came from some rich place. Don't assume life was easy for them. I know some of you had lost your parents. Lisette lost her father at around the same age I was when my father died. And I've said to people, my father was this far away from me, standing healthy, fell over and was dead about 4 minutes later at the age of 49. Okay? Stuff happens. You got to deal with it. You got to move on. In one way, it's harder than you think. In the other way, it's not as hard as you think. Right? And you just move on. Somebody is going to lose a baby during their life. Almost certainly somebody's going to lose a child during their life. Horrible thing. Got to move on. You're going to lose your job. Got to move on. You're going to fail a class. Got to move on. And I think Pooja's comment, learn, no, I'm sorry, it was Christine's comment, learn what didn't work and move on. I told the story the other day, a couple of you have heard this. So I told you I made my own money, and so if I wanted to take a young woman out on a date when I was a teenager, I had to pay for it. I couldn't go to my parents and say, give me money to take this cute young lady, because they'd go, well, we don't have money to go out to get a hamburger. Why should I give it to you? I mean, if somebody's going to go out with her, it's going to be us with our money, not you. So I was making money, and I took this really sweet, cute young woman. I was about probably 16, and we went to the hamburger store, just a little local place, and they sold hamburgers and milkshakes and French fries and onion rings and Coca-Cola. And so I had my money. I've got this cute young girl. What else could life ask for? Right? I've got everything. A little money and a cute girl at the hamburger place. And the waitress comes to the table and says to the cute little girl, what would you like? And she says, well, I'd like a double hamburger with cheese. And I'm going, okay. And then French fries, large French fries while we're at it. Okay. And onion rings. Okay. And a milkshake. And I go, holy shit. And then she says, because then I figure I'm down to a Coca-Cola. That's all. But she's got a milkshake, so surely she's not going to order a Coca-Cola. And the next words out of her mouth are, and a Coca-Cola. I'll just have water. That's fine. That's all the money I had. That's all the money I had. She ate well. But, by the way, I didn't take her out again. One of the things is, people say, I don't want to do a job because it's beneath me. I don't want to clean toilets because it's beneath me. How many have cleaned toilets for money? How many people have their hand up in this room? One. How many dug ditches, with a shovel all day for money? Okay, now a couple of you have, right? I wasn't better than that. You weren't better than that. How many knocked down a building themselves with like a hammer? Big hammer doing. I did for money. And other things. Those are all hard jobs. And those are real people who do those jobs. Respect those people. There was the way I got myself through college was earning money in the summer, I worked during the school year, but in the summer, I worked 2 jobs. But the main job I worked was on the railroad, driving spikes and lifting rail, and this is heavy work. And it was hot and humid where I am in the summer, much hotter than here in the summer, quite humid. And, you know, I was 18, and then the next summer 19, summer after that 20, 21. And I had a hell of a body. I mean, you know, come on, give me a break, right? And I had and all the other guys they had there, because they got a bunch of young guys so they could get a lot of work done, and they had all these guys with, you know, muscular kind of. And the first summer we could go without a shirt if it was hot and humid, because it was hot and humid. The second summer it was hot and humid, we could go out. Third summer, hot and humid. Fourth summer, there was a new law passed by the federal government in the United States that said you had to have a shirt on for safety. Safety? I don't know how a t-shirt's going to keep me. How's that going to keep me safe? And I didn't need it the previous 3 summers. Steel toe shoes, got it. Helmet, got it. T-shirt, no. And what we finally decided was that it was for the safety of the young women walking by and driving by, having car accidents and heart attacks, seeing these amazing bodies. That's what we decided. It was a great lesson in life, which is governments can be really dumb. Really dumb. When I was 13, and my parents were nice people. My father didn't graduate high school. My mother did. My father fought in World War II in the Pacific, like a lot of people. Never got a degree. Never got a college job, if you will, that kind of stuff. Did work. And when I was 13, I had money, though, because I was working, and I had enough to support her as long as she didn't order that Coca-Cola, right? And my parents did something, I have no idea what it was, and it just made me like, what the hell? Why do I need them? I've got money. I've got a bicycle. So I went up to my room. It wasn't my room. It was a room I shared with 4 brothers where there were 4 beds. And there was two, you know, where you put a little bit of clothes in. You didn't have a lot of clothes, okay? And I went up, and I had a little duffel bag. And I put my gym shoes in, and my basketball shorts in, and a pair of underwear in. I went down, and I'm leaving. Because I figure I've got a job, I can get money. And I'm leaving. And I pedal away on my bike, and I realize there's a flaw in my strategy. This is another great lesson in life. It's like you learn. What was the flaw in my strategy? Well, my main job was delivering newspapers to people's houses. People read newspapers back then. And the newspapers were delivered by the newspaper company to my parents' house. That's a problem. Because if I run away, I got to come back to get my newspapers. So I got about, I don't know, half a kilometer away, and I realized this is not a good idea. And I just turned my little bike back around, went home, never said a word. To my mother's death at the age of 96, she didn't know this story. So when you make a mistake, be smart enough to admit it and learn from it. I never ran away from home again while I was a kid. That was a good lesson. So when you see somebody and you think, boy, their life must have been easy. They must have, everything's great. Don't assume that. Own your story is a great line. One of the things that is important is education changed my life. So how did a poor kid? Well, I paid my own way through university, but I also got some scholarships, and one thing led to another, and then I went to graduate school, same way, worked. And my wife worked while I was in graduate school, and we got our way through, okay? And and met people who changed my life, that cared about me. Some of you may remember Lucille. You know, the love, be loved, and be productive. Lucille is 102. She's not as good as she once was. But I was talking to her as I landed in Nairobi the other day. She's still hanging on at 102. And I asked her when she was about 88, what's the secret to all this in life? And her answer was, well, love, be loved, and be productive. That's where we got the phrase. And if you think about it, if you could end up being 102, and you could honestly say, I lived a life where I loved, I was loved, and I was productive. I was productive in my work, I was productive in my school, I was productive as a parent, I was productive as a spouse. That's a good life. Whether you made a lot or a little, that's a good life. If you've been loved, have loved, and be productive. That's why we've adopted that. And it's really great advice. And I had people who cared about me and gave me some opportunities. And that, one of the things I learned is I had two kind of careers once I became a professional. One was teaching at university. And then the other is I had a consulting business, financial and economic consulting business. Very boutique, and how did that get started? All right, was it a big strategy? Did I write up a big business plan? No. I got a call when I was 28 years old, and the person said, I'm the number 2 executive at the 3rd largest paper manufacturer in the country. And we heard you're a bright young guy and we ought to hire you to do some consulting for us. And I think, gee, the word's out. How did they? No advertising, no anything, right? And they then asked how much I charged. Well, it's like your first, and I fumbled out an answer and they said, fine. And I said, I should have said higher. And I realized, though, if I'd have said higher, it would have been rounding error in the context of life, because if I couldn't do the work, they'd have stopped paying me. And if I can do the work, I'll more than make it up if I'm worth more. And don't fight about it now. I was happy to name that number, and that was good. And then 2 days later, Michelin Tire, which is one of the biggest tire companies in the world, called out of the blue, same conversation. I'm the president of Michelin Tire in the US, and we hear you're a bright young guy, and we should hire you. And same thing. And I worked for them for a number of years and other firms in that regard. Now, the question is, how did they know to call me? This is another great lesson in life. I didn't advertise. Who the hell knew me? Well, it turns out that many years later, I found out, and I'll just take somebody like Mahesh. What they really did was call the person they should have called. Somebody 46 years old, credentials, experience, and they called that person, and Mahesh said, I'm sorry I can't do it, I'm busy. I'm fully booked. I don't have any capacity to take on new. What's the next question that company's going to ask? Who can you recommend? And it turned out that I had given a couple of talks on some research I had done. And this person, who I wasn't close to, said, well, there's this, quote, bright young guy at the University of Chicago, you might give him a call. True story. And by the way I got Michelin Tire was the same way from another person. They called the exact person they should have called. That person didn't have the bandwidth, the capacity to take on anything new. What's the next question? Who do you recommend? That person had seen me give a presentation and said, oh, and they called. Education is a lot more than paying fees. Some of you, I think Ann, you were one, had somebody pay their fees for a while. What was the difference between the sponsor